Another day passes in the Traitors' castle, meaning it's now day 4. Last night, the players banished their first traitor in Haley, but tensions were very high at the round table, seeing 3 of the 4 remaining traitors get some heat. With that in mind, they decided to kill either Kira, Yasu, or Emma, hopefully removing a player from the game that isn't a number for the Traitors team. We'll soon find out who makes it out alive, and who does not. Inside of the breakfast room, Jonathan is already seated, waiting for everyone else to join him. In his confessional, Jonathan claims that he's feeling great with one of the traitors taken down. His hope is that they can find another traitor today, and his main suspects as of now are Darren, Cassandra, and Nita. This is mainly because he believes there are at least 2 reality stars within the traitor team, considering the traitors killed off Pascal super early into the game and kept Darren alive over Tim. In the room, Penelope is next to enter, and she says hello to Jonathan, someone she likes to have around. Jonathan appreciates her nice comment and says that he loves having some other older players in here. It would feel awkward being the only older player in the game. Penelope somewhat agrees, but she says she fits in pretty well with some of the younger people. She loves Emma the most. The room's door then opens wide, and in comes Krael. Penelope claps for Krael and says it's one of her other favorites in the castle. Krael bows down and says he loves both Penelope and Jonathan back. In confessional, Krael says that he wants to clear things up today regarding Olivia's vote at the banishment. He doesn't understand where Olivia is coming from, especially because she's the only person so far that has accused him of being a traitor. Krael then tells Penelope and Jonathan that he had no idea Olivia suspected him until last night. Penelope says she found her vote odd, considering there were many other names thrown out there. Krael says he'll find out what's up with Olivia later on. The next player to enter the room is Crystal, followed by Darla, and then Nita. In confessional, Nita claims she had a horrible night. She couldn't fall asleep because of the amount of accusations going her way yesterday night. She wasn't prepared whatsoever, so now she has to be more prepared when it comes to these banishments. In the room, Nita says that she hopes things reset between her and some other people. She wants to apologize to Emma because she may have come off rude towards her, causing her to be rude back. Penelope says that Emma will appreciate the apology, so she should go for it. In confessional, Penelope says that she doesn't care about Nita in this game. She's a traitor 100%. However, go ahead and apologize to Emma. It'll mean Nita won't murder her. Back in the room, Cassandra enters, happy to see some of the faces in the room. Darla then decides to bring up how crucial last night was. Everyone knows there's no recruitment yet, so based on yesterday's vote, they can depict who seems the most innocent and who doesn't. In confessional, Darla says that she trusts the people who threw out Haley's name from very early on, mainly since day 2, which was after the traitors met. Kira is her number 1 ally in here and number 1 trusted faithful. Sasha and Yasu also seem like faithful based on their voting history. They both voted Haley night 2, and then they started figuring out James and then Stephanie as possible traitors. At the moment, she only trusts those 3 players, and today, some of the reality stars might get the heat, especially Stephanie. Back with the group, Sasha enters the room next, and Zach comes in shortly after. Zach publicly apologizes to everyone because he recently realized how he messed up by coming out with his shield. He just wanted to show it off to Pablo because he hates his guts in this game. In confessional, Cassandra talks about how weird of a player Zach is. That shield reveal yesterday felt very odd to her. Why would a faithful ever reveal to the entire group they have the shield? It seems very fishy to her, so she'll press Zach about it more. Cassandra then tells Zach that it essentially confirmed a faithful would get murdered last night. Zach knows and feels horrible about it. Cassandra asks herself if he really feels bad though, or if he's just saying that. Zach sighs and decides to go quiet. The breakfast room doors then open, and Olivia enters, followed by Yasu, then Alessandro, and then Cristefani. She sits down next to Alessandro, and he says good morning, so she says it back. Alessandro asks her how she's feeling after last night, and Cristefani responds with nervous laughter. She says she did not expect to be in the hot seat last minute. In confessional, Alessandro admits he doesn't know how trustworthy Cristefani is. He's more concerned with Nita at the moment since he called her out and she seemed very wobbly in her responses to his accusations. Cristefani then whispers to Alessandro that she's mostly unsure how to feel about Yasu and Sasha, considering they accused James earlier in the day, but neither came forward with that information at the round table. Alessandro doesn't have an opinion on that, but Cristefani continues on by explaining that traitors don't vote each other out so early into the game, so anyone who did not vote Haley last night should be suspects, and to her, Sasha and Yasu are the highest suspects. After some time, Danielle enters the room, followed by James, and then Darren. Cassandra breathes out, relieved Darren survived. In confessional, Darren says that he's pretty surprised him and Cassandra have made it this far into the game. Sure, it's only the third round, but he expected one of them to be murdered or banished within the first few days. Hopefully he isn't jinxing it now and one of them get banished or murdered tonight. Back with the group, Crystal says that they are still waiting for Kira, Emma, Pablo, and Amira. Penelope then looks at Jonathan, visibly afraid that the traitors may have murdered Emma. Jonathan tells her it can't be true, crossing his fingers that it truly is not the case. Pablo then walks into the room, leaving just Kira, Emma, and Amira yet to enter. Pablo sits down, finding out who has yet to enter. He then says that he believes the traitors murdered Kira to possibly frame Darla after everything that went down at last night's banishment. In confessional, James widens his eyes after hearing Pablo's thought process, since that's exactly what the traitors were thinking about. If they murdered Kira, they could frame Darla and turn her into the next banishment target. Back in the room, Sasha says that she personally doesn't believe Darla is the traitor, and Darla thanks her and everyone else who trusts her. If the traitors really killed Kira, she'll be pretty upset and will do whatever she can to clock who killed her. Shortly after Darla says this, everyone hears a knock at the door, and they all turn to the door's direction. Amira then walks in, and Emma is right behind, leaving people shook. Pablo screams out loud that he knew it, and Cassandra tells him well done. Emma asks who got murdered, and Pablo says Kira, as he figured. Emma then sits down and says she could go for some wine this morning, completely ignoring the fact that Kira was murdered. Amira says she isn't too surprised by this kill. Kira was mainly quiet, and whenever she spoke up, it was to defend Darla. Pablo fills Amira in about his theory he mentioned not too long ago. He felt like Kira would be murdered to frame it onto Darla. Darla smiles, happy that the blame isn't going onto her automatically. In confessional, Darla says that Pablo is going onto her trust list now. He made sure to call out the traitor's tactics with this kill. Of course, she will do whatever she can to avenge Kira, and she's looking right at the people who did not vote for Haley last night. In a flashback, Kira finds out she was murdered in the confessional room. She sighs and says that she wishes she could continue playing as it was a blast. She just got a traitor down and saved her bestie, Darla. But now, she can't be part of the remainder of this experience. She hopes Darla ends up surviving because she would be a badass winner in her books. After breakfast, the players roam around the castle, wondering if Pablo's theory is correct, or if it's a complete fluke. Emma sits in a room with Penelope who offers to go grab them drinks, and Emma says they can go together in a bit. She just wanted to hear her thoughts about Pablo's theory earlier in the breakfast room. Penelope tells Emma that she truly thinks Darla is faithful and that they need to look at Nita, who is the real guilty criminal. In confessional, Penelope says that she always had her sights set onto Nita. She's not the nice, innocent mom that people are referring her to. She's a psycho traitor who cries for attention. Emma then tells Penelope that she's willing to push Nita's name out there because they don't like each other anyway. Penelope then laughs as she recalls Nita trying to apologize for hating on her. Emma then squints and calls Nita a loser for not apologizing in front of her face. In confessional, Emma says that Nita is deathly afraid of her, so she'll use that to her advantage going into tonight's banishment. She'll do whatever in her power to expose Nita and make sure she's the one who crumbles in the end. In another group chat, we have Nita, Pablo, Yasu, Cassandra, and Darren. Pablo says that he hopes people don't assume he's a traitor for calling out Kira's murder before it was confirmed. Cassandra says that it shouldn't be considered a bad thing, considering everyone likes to place their bets every morning. Plus, he gave a legitimate reason as to why he thinks so. Pablo says that he doesn't exactly know who the traitors are based on this kill, but it does confirm that Darla is a faithful. In confessional, Yasu says that to him, this murder seems like one Kristefany would attempt. She's been in his sights since last night's discussion, so he feels like it's easy to connect her to this kill. He hopes that tonight, she'll be the one banished, and then him and Sasha will be cleared by the rest of the faithful. Cassandra then tells this group that she wants to focus on Kristefany as a traitor option after last night's erratic behavior from her. Darren agrees, but Nita stays quiet. In confessional, Cassandra says that after calling out Kristefany last night, her whole demeanor shifted. Perhaps she was spooked, but the true Kristefany from Teams at War is never spooked. That's why she's suspicious to her at the moment. Pablo then tells the group that he's willing to support this idea that Chris is a traitor. The points against her make sense. He then asks Nita for her opinion, and she says that she'll vote Kristefany if she has a bad defense. In confessional, Nita says that she's growing worried for the entire traitor team. Not only is the heat on herself, but it's also on Kristefany, her ride or die in this game. She doesn't know what to do right now to save her. All she can do is warn Chris so she can prepare a speech ahead of time. As Kristefany sits on a couch alone, James and Olivia join her, asking her if she's doing okay. Kristefany looks around to see if anyone else is here, and then she tells them she's very worried about her own safety. James tells her that they will support her in whatever way possible tonight. In confessional, James says that he's going to be a team player in this early game. The traitors just lost Haley at the previous round table, so losing Kristefany would be really bad for them overall. The traitors can only recruit one person this season, so he does not want to risk losing all his teammates too soon to where the faithful have way more power than him. James then tells Kristefany that they need a solidified plan for tonight's vote. They need to figure out who they'll collectively target. Suddenly, Jonathan and Amira join the group, and Jonathan asks them if they are doing alright. Olivia tells him and Amira that they were discussing how Kristefany got some heat recently, and she's still recovering from last night. Amira asks Kristefany if she has a plan to save herself, and Kristefany says that she can only proceed based on concrete evidence, and at the moment, she's looking at Zach and thinking of why he revealed his shield so easily at the last banishment. Jonathan says that Zach is either an idiot or he completely ignored the fact that shields need to be hidden, likely because he's thinking as a traitor. In confessional, Jonathan says that it's not impossible for Zach to be a traitor. The only thing that doesn't add up is why he gunned so hard for Haley, considering she was a traitor. It's also good to note that Zach kept bringing up Pablo's name, as if he was priority for him, and not Haley originally. Then, he flipped on Haley when he realized that she was going home. Olivia then tells this group that she can see a world where Zach is this mastermind traitor that nobody will expect. He seems like a perfect pick as a traitor from the newbie side of things. James agrees and says that they may as well push for Zach tonight, assuming everyone in this room trusts Kristefany. Kristefany is later pulled aside by Nita, and Nita fills her in that there's a big push for her to go tonight. She lists Cassandra, Darren, Pablo, Yasu, and likely even Sasha as part of the group going against her. Kristefany tells Nita that they need to fight back. She already spoke with James and Olivia, with Jonathan and Amira joining them soon after, and they all agreed Zach would be the vote tonight. In confessional, Christephanie breathes out due to how nervous she is. She never felt this nervous in a social strategy deduction game. Perhaps it's difficult to know how safe she really is with the amount of players in the game. There's still 19 people, and this season is becoming very dynamic. There's not that much control she can gain right now, so she just needs to rally as many numbers as she can for this banishment so Zach will go home and she lives another day. Nita then tells Christephanie that their best chance at winning tonight's banishment is to hope there's a split vote so that their votes can get Zach out of here. Later on, Sasha and Danielle talk with Zach, who is currently feeling very guilty. He tells the two that he fully regrets revealing his shield last night, since now people want to accuse him for it. It clearly didn't affect the result of the murder, but he still feels like he stabbed himself in the foot. Sasha tells Zach straight to his face that he is terrible at this game, but they can still get through this alive. In confessional, Sasha explains that she needs Christephanie out of this game. If they vote her out and she's a traitor, that is great. If she's faithful, that'll give the other faithful more information as to who it could be. In that case, James is likely the true traitor. Zach clearly isn't a traitor, so she'll need to make sure people vote correctly tonight, and that's for Christephanie to be banished. Danielle tells Zach that he has nothing to worry about tonight. He just shouldn't act stupid like last night. Zach breathes out and says he'll shut up today. He doesn't want to dig himself an even bigger grave. In fact, he'll keep his vote today so he can be part of this Christephanie vote. Sasha says she'll also keep her vote, despite it being very risky. Danielle says the same, and in confessional, Danielle says that she didn't come onto the Traitors to play scared. She wants to vote tonight and confirm her faithful role to the others. She has a dilemma though. She has to decide if she wants to stay loyal to Christephanie or not. Christephanie might be a very useful ally to her game going forward, even if she is a traitor. If Chris really is a traitor, she'll keep her alive and vouch for her to the other traitors. Or at least, that's her hope. She just has to decide if she can trust Chris with this strategy or not. Ideally, Nita goes home tonight. But if the vote is leaning more towards Christephanie and Zach, she'll have to make a huge decision which could upset a certain bunch of people. It's that time for the faithful crown ceremony to occur again, and everyone is gathered in the courtyard. They find out that it's a normal faithful crown ceremony, meaning anyone who nominates themselves for the shield will lose their vote at tonight's banishment. Everyone else will then vote for one of the nominees to gain the shield in private. With that, everyone is asked to stand if they want a chance at getting the shield, and 3 people get up out of their seats. Those people are Amira, Yasu, and Darren. In confessional, Yasu says that if he's going to push for Christephanie to go home tonight, he needs some protection with that shield. Even if he doesn't win it, the traitors wouldn't have the balls to attack him. In another confessional, Amira says that she volunteered for the shield because she doesn't need to be involved in tonight's vote. She wants to stay as neutral as possible to avoid murder. She feels pretty safe at this coming banishment, so she's comfortable enough to volunteer for the shield a second time this season. Back outside, Darren tells the group that he just wants this shield because after tonight, he might become a target. Yasu then cuts in and says he feels the same way about himself. He's ready to fight for what he wants to happen, and in order to do that while protected, he needs that shield. Amira then says that she simply nominated herself because she feels like she's the easiest kill for the traitors, someone who isn't really going out of her way to make any enemies. She hopes people realize this and provide her a shield so that they can't take her out tonight. The players who are seated then vote in secret, and in confessional with Cassandra, she says that she kind of wishes she volunteered for that shield, because now she's going to be very vulnerable tonight, considering all goes well and Christephanie goes home. Unless of course, she's a faithful. In that case, her and Darren are dumb faithful. In another confessional, Sasha says she'll vote Amira tonight instead of Darren or Yasu. Those 2 guys seem more likely to get a shield, so she wants to keep Amira safe in case the traitors decide to make a big play and attack her tonight. In another confessional, Darla says that she didn't volunteer for the shield today because she still doesn't feel fully safe. She wants to have a vote because she knows Emma will be going after her. As for this shield vote, she'll place her vote onto Yasu since she trusts him the most out of anyone right now. He has very genuine reactions at these roundtables and he seems very concise with his thoughts. After all 16 voters finish, the results are locked in, and in confessional, Amira is in complete shock that she actually won the shield. She didn't think people would vote for her over Yasu and Darren. Perhaps, the faithful were smart and realized that it's better to be unpredictable with handing out these shields. She's glad she's playing alongside smart faithful. In another confessional, Nita says that any of these 3 volunteers could have gotten the shield. Her money is on Yasu though after what happened last night. Either way, there's no way she'll risk murdering one of those 3 volunteers since the traitors need to get these murders down. With nightfall coming, the players need to get to this next banishment as soon as possible. With 19 players still remaining and the traitors being in hot water, the faithful seem to have the upper hand right now. But, will they mess up tonight? We'll find out very soon. Everyone is now seated at the banishment room, waiting for the discussion to commence. As a reminder, Amira, Yasu, and Darren will not vote tonight, leaving 16 votes that will be cast. The discussion may now begin, so Cassandra starts off because she wants to make it clear that Christephanie has been talked about as a possible traitor almost all day now. She wants to give her an opportunity to defend herself though before things are set in stone. Christephanie thanks Cassandra for opening the floor to her, and she says that she won't waste their time. She will get straight to the point tonight. Last night, she was under the impression that Haley was going to be banished. She was ready for the vote since everyone got their accusations out there, and then suddenly, heat went her way from Cassandra. She was simply confused by Cassandra's intentions because they all felt ready for the vote. So then, she only pointed out that she wasn't the only one not speaking up with her own accusations. Sasha and Yasu were part of that too. They wanted James gone, but they never spoke up. Sasha then interrupts, asking Christephanie why her tone sounded as if she was deflecting any heat from herself onto them too, even though nobody was ever looking at her as a traitor suspect. Christephanie then replies and says that there clearly was someone suspicious of herself, that being Cassandra. That's why she wanted to be clear that she wasn't the only one holding back accusations. Emma then asks Christephanie who she's accusing in that case, since she voted Haley and she got banished. Christephanie then says that she thinks Zach is a traitor. Zach's eyes widen in response, and Christephanie continues to explain that he's the only person at the moment who has concrete evidence against him. He revealed his shield carelessly at the previous banishment, so that to her shows he's a traitor. Zach then defends himself, saying that he wasn't thinking about it in the moment. Nita cuts in and asks why not, since every faithful should automatically know that the shield never leaves their own mouth. Zach says that he was just super hyped to get either Haley or Pablo out. Christephanie says that he sounded more willing to vote Pablo out, so it seems a bit weird that he wasn't gunning for Haley initially. Zach says he was after both of them, but then James says that it's not fully the case. He always had something against Pablo, and then Pablo cuts in to agree with that. He felt like Zach has always been on his own neck, and not really Haley's. Could it be that they were both traitor teammates and he was trying his very best not to accuse Haley? If he got the votes onto himself, everyone would see he's a faithful, meaning people would stop accusing Haley and they would never look at Zach. Zach says that he's not that smart to come up with something like that, and Sasha says that she unfortunately has to disagree with what people are saying about Zach. He's not that smart, unlike Christephanie. Penelope then wants to speak up, asking if people have forgotten about Nita, and Nita squints in response. Sasha then says that people are looking more at Christephanie and Zach tonight. It might be a bad idea to split the vote even further because in her eyes, even though it's pretty brutal to say this, she feels like Christephanie's teammates might try their very best to vote Zach out tonight. Christephanie is in shock with what Sasha is saying, telling her that she's taking this way too far now. Traitors can't even do that because that would fully expose them as traitors once their teammates goes out. Sasha says she doesn't believe her. Yesterday explained so much to her. Crystal then says that she personally doesn't understand why Christephanie is getting as much heat as she is, considering that Zach has concrete evidence against him. Sasha says that nothing is concrete unless it's a slip-up that completely exposes their traitor role. That's why this evidence against Zach isn't even reliable in the first place. He could very well be a faithful who slipped up on accident while holding the shield. Emma then says she doesn't know where she's gonna go because the same few people keep talking. She wants to know what other people think, so she yells out Crael's name to say something. Crael says that he is fully on board to vote Christephanie tonight because it's way more likely the faithful will get out a reality star traitor, considering one newbie traitor just got out. Crystal respectfully tells Crael that they need to cut the crap and stop assuming there's 2 or 3 reality star traitors. Nobody knows for sure who was chosen to be a traitor. They need to use in-game evidence and stop metagaming. Jonathan speaks up though, saying it's not really metagaming considering what murders took place so far. It started with Tim going rather than Darren, and then Pascal going, likely because the reality stars know how dangerous he can be. Now with Kira, they simply needed to set up Darla, and Pablo clocked that. Darla then says that she trusts Pablo as a faithful because of how he predicted Kira's murder and what it could have meant to the traitors. Right now, she's starting to think that a reality star might have to go tonight, and that might have to be Christephanie. Christephanie breathes out and says that she's basically falling victim to metagaming. Then, under her own breath, Sasha says that this word is starting to piss her off. She then publicly tells everyone to stop using metagaming from now on. The evidence used against Christephanie isn't metagaming. She messed up at last night's banishment, which is evidence that is being used against her. The time for talk is now over, meaning the 16 voters must now write down the name of the person they'd like to banish. Everyone then begins writing down a name, and in Christephanie's confessional, she cries to herself because this very well could be her last day in the castle. She needs to pray that Zach gets voted out. However, the odds seem stacked against her. In another confessional with Zach, he says that it would blow his mind if people don't vote out a reality star. Christephanie's defense was super weak compared to his own. In a third confessional, Danielle says she's struggling to decide what's best for her game right now. Christephanie looks somewhat guilty after tonight's roundtable discussion, but is voting her out the right thing for her game? Everyone is done writing down a name, so the vote begins with Christephanie. She shows her slate, reading out Zach's name. The evidence from last night's roundtable basically proved to her that he's not thinking like a faithful. Cassandra then goes next, and she shows her vote for Christephanie. It hurts her heart to vote her from a personal level, but on a game level, she has a really good feeling that she's voting for a traitor. Alessandro is asked to go next, and he shows his vote for Zach. He doesn't feel confident with Zach at this point. He isn't even doing a good job defending himself. At least Chris fought her hardest to convince everyone she's faithful. Crystal is then up next, and she says that she switched her vote to Zach after hearing all the metagaming crap. At this point, it seems like a newbie traitor strategy to bring up metagaming. We're now at 3 votes Zach, and 1 vote Christephanie. Olivia is up next, and she shows her vote for Zach, explaining that she didn't like what Zach did last night or even tonight. If it's not him, she's obviously going to regret not voting for Chris. Emma is next, and she shows her vote for Christephanie. She admits she doesn't have a clue who the traitor could be between Chris and Zach. Maybe neither are. But between the two, Christephanie has more uncertainty circulating around her true identity. Jonathan is up next, showing his vote for Zach. Considering how Christephanie was part of the group of people who thought Haley needed to go, while Zach wasn't really in that same boat, shows to him that Zach is a more likely traitor candidate than Chris. We're now at 5 votes Zach, and 2 votes Christephanie. James is next, and he reveals his slate with Zach's name on it. He just doesn't like what Zach did at last night's roundtable. Pablo is next, and he shows his vote for Zach as well. There's just a lot of chaotic gameplay coming from him ever since he was nominated for murder. Normally, a faithful would get over it, but he hasn't and has tunneled onto him the whole time. That's now 7 votes for Zach, 2 votes Christephanie. Sasha is next, showing her vote for Christephanie. She says it comes as no surprise that she is sticking to her guns. Christephanie hasn't done anything good for the faithful, so she is a more likely traitor candidate than the idiot himself, Zach. Zach is next, and he shows his vote for Christephanie, claiming that he doesn't feel bad at all for voting her. He sees the clear picture right now, and that's her and her traitor fellows pushing for him to go home. Christephanie now has 4 votes, while Zach has 7. Crael is next, and says it's no surprise he voted for Christephanie. He feels like there are many more secrets hidden within the fiery-haired Chris, so he wants more clarity by confirming her role in the game. Penelope is up next, and she says that she initially wanted to vote for Nita as her true suspicion, but the next best thing is voting Christephanie, considering everyone is between her and Zach tonight. That's now 7 votes for Zach, 6 votes for Christephanie. Only 3 votes remain, and Darla is asked to go next. She then shows her vote for Christephanie as well, simply because things aren't adding up with what happened last night. This is now all tied up, with 7 votes for both Zach and Christephanie. Nita is up next, and she reveals her vote for Zach. She doesn't appreciate his attitude at these roundtables, acting like the big man in the room. In reality, he's likely just a traitor trying to gain the trust of the faithful so he can vote out other faithful. We're now at 8 votes Zach, and 7 votes Christephanie. It all comes down to Danielle. If Danielle voted Christephanie, we will be tied. If not, Zach will be banished. Danielle is then asked to show her vote to the group. Danielle breathes out, unhappy to be the decider here. She considered every single piece of evidence used against Christephanie and Zach tonight to make this decision. Both seem inconsistent, but there's something about Zach's demeanor that is throwing her off. Danielle then looks at Christephanie intensely, telling her that she's going to be on her radar if Zach is not a traitor. Danielle flips her slate, showing Zach's name on it, leaving so many people disappointed, and so many people relieved. Zach shakes his head in disbelief, unable to understand the logic behind people's votes for him. He's then asked to get up and head to the front to reveal his role, so he slowly gets up and makes his way to the front. Christephanie puts her head down onto the table, exhausted from this banishment. Cassandra then looks at Darren and shakes her head in disbelief. Danielle flips her hair and looks at Zach as he stands at the front, ready with a speech. He says that he will never understand why he was voted out over a suspicious reality star. Sure, he made a huge mistake revealing his shield last night, but that shouldn't have been looked at as a traitor move. It was a simple accident that did not affect the other players who volunteered for the shield. At this point, the traitors might be on their way to win this game if the faithful are losing momentum. Zach reveals he was a faithful, leaving everyone in the room shaken up. Sasha says out loud that she knew it, and then points her finger at Christephanie and says that the traitor just got away with another round. Zach leaves the room and Pablo says he personally doesn't care at this point, since Zach decided to jump him day after day. Penelope then tells everyone that it's ridiculous how split this cast is. She wishes they just voted for Nita because she has way more suspicion than Chris and Zach combined. Nita doesn't say anything in response, but it doesn't dissuade Emma from adding to the fire. She says that she's gunning for Nita, capital G, U-N-N-I-N-G. In confessional, Sasha says that she's pissed Christephanie is getting away with everything. They were so close to voting her out, but it seems some reality stars refuse to vote each other out, which is pissing her off. This vote just proved to her that the traitors are likely on the side that voted for Zach. The faithful will just have to look back at voting history to determine who is truly guilty. After Zach's banishment, the players roam around the castle before it's time for bed. In the courtyard, Emma, Penelope, Sasha, Yasu, and Krael chat about the latest events, and Emma says she loves calling out Nita. In confessional, Emma says that there's something about Nita that is just so fun to tease. This isn't her being a villain against Nita's life outside of the game. Nita is clearly a traitor who sucks at faking emotions. Sometimes, you need to tease someone because they'll run out of ways to deal with the teasing and then slip up. Krael then says that he has to drop a name that might shock people. He thinks Olivia is with the traitor team because she's barely saying anything at these banishments, and she somehow ends up voting with the other side that seemingly has traitors on it. In confessional, Krael says that he's ready to gun for Olivia going forward. She's so clearly a traitor based on the lack of effort she's putting into this game. She's giving nothing at these roundtables. Emma then says that she's locking in her vote for Nita tomorrow. She's not changing up like today because it doesn't feel right to vote someone who isn't even as suspicious as her own top suspect. Yasu says that he's going for Christephanie tomorrow, and Sasha says she has to jump on board that train. She can't look past Christephanie so easily. Krael says that they'll all see why it has to be Olivia tomorrow. He'll make his case tomorrow. Meanwhile, Christephanie is shaken up, and Nita, Olivia, Pablo, and Cassandra try to comfort her. Cassandra tells Christephanie to look up at her. Chris then looks at her, and Cassandra tells her that everything she said about her at the round table today was strictly game. She doesn't want her to think she's against her on a personal level. In confessional, Cassandra says that she promised to never play a dirty game. She's not a villain in the real world. She can't be one. Seeing how exhausted and upset Christephanie is just shows her that she might be going a bit far while accusing her. She had to deal with Sasha on top of that, who can be very intense at these roundtables. She still thinks Chris is a traitor, but she'll try to be open-minded and consider other options when possible. Christephanie then wipes away her tears and says that she's never going to be able to relax in this game with the amount of heat she's getting. She's basically accepting at this point that she's going home. She doesn't know how else to convince people she's faithful. Nita then tells Chris that she's going through the same thing as herself. Emma and Penelope will never stop gunning for her, but she just has to move past that. Pablo tells Christephanie that it's not over yet. She still has a game to play. In confessional, Pablo says that it's wild how dynamic and unpredictable this season is going. Despite Zach being a faithful, Christephanie still doesn't strike him as a traitor, or at least not anymore after seeing how emotional she is. She seems deflated, on edge to give up. A traitor would do their best to continue fighting, and that's why Nita is probably a traitor, unfortunately. She might have to be the one to go tomorrow because something doesn't sit right with him. The moon has now risen, meaning it's time for the players to head to bed. They all say goodbye to one another as they slowly make their way to their individual bedrooms. In Christephanie's confessional, she says that she doesn't know how to approach this game from here on out. It doesn't look great with Zach leaving as a faithful. People are now looking at her and Nita the most. There's only so much she can do now to protect herself and her traitor team. It might have to be time to throw a traitor under the bus to prove her own innocence, but she doesn't know how to pull that off yet. With it being the fourth night officially, the 4 remaining traitors meet up at the turret, and they unveil their hoodies. Christephanie covers her face because of how stressful their situations are. James says it's not looking so bright for them. He was hoping for there to be more of a landslide against Zach, but clearly it was closer than expected. Nita says she feels pretty empty, meaning she doesn't have many ideas on how to go forward. Christephanie says she doesn't either. There's still so many people in this game who want all of them out. At least Olivia hasn't had her name brought up yet. Olivia says it could happen soon, so you never know. James then asks if they are ready for this next murder, and Christephanie says that they'll need to pick someone who voted against her so they can create this narrative that the traitors want her to look as guilty as possible. Nita then says that people will look at herself in that case, which obviously doesn't work for her. Christephanie says that there's a good chance people will split between the two of them, and then they'll have the votes to vote who they want. Olivia then brings up Krael as their first murder option. He obviously sided with Sasha at the vote, so it works with this narrative that Chris is being framed. Krael was also brought up as a threat to their team a few times, so now might be the time to murder him. It'll be impossible to vote him out. James then brings up Darla as a safe kill. She's not suspected at all anymore, and Pablo already clocked them for killing Kira with the intention of framing Darla. Christephanie then brings up her preference, that being murdering Sasha. She's already seen as a faithful leader, and nobody will ever try to vote her out. She's just really good at this game, almost too good. Nita says that it's wild how good Sasha is. It's as if she played this game before. Regardless, Nita brings up her preferred murder choice, and that is Danielle. Even though she voted out Zach, she publicly said she was close to voting Chris out. Danielle will be a threat to both Chris and herself because she's on to both of them. It's better just to remove that threat right now. Christephanie looks at Nita but doesn't do anything to prevent Danielle from being considered. The four continue to discuss what they could do with this murder, and they end up deciding on a name. They write down their murder victim's name on a scroll and throw it ahead. James says that as soon as one of them get voted out, the rest will just tumble with them. They made it clear what side they are on, so they have to continue fighting for each other. Nita agrees and says that this is the perfect way for all four of them to trust each other without worry of any betrayals. Suddenly, the traitors see a note fall from the ceiling. The title of the note says Twist. All four of them look at each other in shock, and James decides to read out the note for them. As he quickly schemes through what it says before saying it out loud, his jaw drops.